First question, are you having fun getting everything set up?
Oh, absolutely. Especially this is the 60th anniversary of the Song Contest, and we're in Austria where they know how to put together a party. They have a lot of experience with big events. So for us, this is a true pleasure.
Yeah, I have a good friend who lives in Munich. He's an American, and he said the Austrians are like the Germans, except they know how to have a good time.
Well, we have experience with the Germans too, and the Austrians. So I think it's the perfect mix between the German ability to organize and their steadiness, and then they also have this sort of more Eastern European flair over themselves, which the Germans don't.
Yeah.
So that makes them a great host for the upcoming Song Contest.
Okay. All right, so take us through how Australia happened. Short version, obviously.
Well, I think it happened about 3 or 4 years ago that the Australians they were at the event and they were there covering the show, and they did their commentary because they were broadcasting it. And they had a crew backstage, and they pulled us aside, and it's like, oh, we really love to participate in the Song Contest, and is there a way, is there something we can do to make this happen? And we're like, well, we're very sorry, but the rules say you cannot participate, you're not an active member of the EBU, you're not in Europe, you're really far out of it. So this is really not possible, but maybe we can find other ways to engage you. And I think they quickly realized that the whole rule argument was a big one for us. So they went along and said, okay, let's try and find other ways to at least be more included in the show. So that eventually led to the interval act that we had from the Australians last year. And back then we were internally already exploring ways to how do we want to celebrate the 60th anniversary, and is there anything sort of one-off that we can do? And then suddenly the pieces started to come together, and we said if we want to really walk the talk when it comes to this year's slogan, building bridges, if we really want to turn something that is essentially European into something which is more global, then including Australia as a one-off would be great to do. When we then approached them with the idea, they were at first, of course, ecstatic until they realized that, participating also comes with a lot of responsibilities and also with a lot of obligations, especially in case you win. So they had to sort out these challenges on their end. And then eventually, I think it was somewhere a week, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, that we finally managed to sort of answer all the questions and to confirm that Australia was participating in the final.
Okay. And I assume they're paying like everybody else, so are they paying equivalent to what each of the big five pay?
I think what they're paying is roughly in that direction. That's right. I wouldn't tell you the exact sum because that is, as you probably remember, confidential. Mm-hmm. But they're paying a reasonable sum to participate. That's right.
Okay. All right. So this brings up the giant question of: will we see other countries in the future on a one-time basis?
Well, this is really, for us, we see this as a one-off. There's no long-term strategy to include other countries. There's no long-term strategy to turn the Eurovision Song Contest into what the fans call a World Vision Song Contest. But of course it will be interesting to see what happens. And as always, we are open to new developments, new ideas. If this sparks the attention in other countries, say United States or Canada or South Africa or China, then we would have to think of, what can we do to embrace their enthusiasm in the years to come. So it will be interesting to see how other countries respond to this. But there's no long-term strategy and no ambition at this moment to include other countries.
But there definitely is the openness to keep looking for different one-time things to do of different kinds, right?
Well, first of all, the idea to include Australia in the Song Contest as a one-off is it's very much fueled by the 60th anniversary and our desire to do something special. But I think what makes the Song Contest so special is that we always try to do something new to surprise the viewer. Mm-hmm. Of course, there will be new things coming in the future. What these things are, we very much look at that on a year-by-year basis because the media environment, the TV environment is so quickly changing that it's you would tie yourself into a very challenging setup if you would start to plan many years ahead.
Okay. And I say this speaking as an American, don't invite the United States into it. We screw everything up on something like this.
Well, I think I've seen a bit of the Oscars, and that was great fun. So I think the Americans know how to put together a party as well. And,
oh, yeah, we know how to do all that. It's just we turn it into our own thing, and then, you know...
But that's actually, if you look at the Song Contest and the way that people look upon it in the different countries in Europe, you see that the brand has its own values in every individual country.
Yeah.
In some countries, in the UK, people laugh about it. In Sweden, they take it so seriously that as if it's the most important thing in the world. It's more important than sports. Mm-hmm. In Russia, they look upon this as a top quality event, while in Ireland, people think it's rather trashy. In the Netherlands, people used to laugh about it, but then they have sent 2 good entries, managed to qualify for the final, a second place last year, and suddenly it's hot, it's something everyone is talking about. You don't have to be embarrassed anymore to watch it, and you certainly don't have to be embarrassed to work for it anymore, which is, of course, something I personally experienced being Dutch.
Yeah. Okay, what constitutes a political message in a song?
You know, that's I don't think you can draw a fine line and say this is political and this is not. It really depends on the message of a song, the context, the background of the performance, symbolism being used very frequently. Sometimes it's being tried to tell sort of a more political story by using symbolism. But essentially, you have to look at every song and then say, is this a song about the topic that it's really about, or is there some message in it? And we do that because we don't want the Song Contest to become a platform to promote political views or political messages.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so here's an interesting one, because it's such a special case. If Ukraine called up today and said the truce is holding, and therefore they can enter a group, would you guys make an exception and let them in at this last moment?
Sorry, come again. I couldn't hear you.
Okay, so let's say that in Ukraine they find that the truce, the latest truce, actually is holding, and Ukraine then calls you guys up and says, all right, the truce is holding, we now feel that we can participate this year. Would you let them in at this late moment, that being such a special case of what's been going on there?
Actually, I checked for you because I knew you were coming up with this question. At this point, that's no longer possible. So even if Ukraine would now come in and say, oh, we would love to participate, it's just from a scheduling point of view, from a technical point of view, it's no longer possible to include them. So the answer would be no. Okay. And frankly, we have very good dialogue with the broadcaster in Ukraine. They have very clear and specific reasons why not to participate. So at the moment, it would be a purely hypothetical scenario. and there's no doubt on their mind that they will skip this year.
By any, this just occurred to me, any chance would they maybe be invited to be part of the halftime show?
Well, that's not the intention either. They have other issues at their mind. We are trying to work out a scenario with them to at least get it on air, because it's always sparking a lot of interest in Ukraine. And it would be good for the continuity of the brand to at least be aired, but that's entirely up to them. The situation in Ukraine is very challenging. You probably know everything about it as well.
Yeah.
And if they would feel it's inappropriate, we would of course respect that decision and happily look forward to next year when the situation is hopefully better.
Okay. Does the EBU have any say in the running order of the acts?
Technically, yes, but I was actually there in the room when this happened last year in Denmark. What happens is that really the producers of the show, who deal with the content for an entire year until it goes on air, they are coming together, look at the acts, the performances, the songs, the messages in the song, the light, the content on the screens, the geography of the different countries, and then they make up their mind what would be the best possible running order, obviously based on the draw that was conducted with the participants, in which half there would be. We just observe that to make sure that it's a fair process based on the content and the creation of the show. And then they say, this is the running order we believe is right. And then all we do is say approved or not approved for whatever reason. But that was not the case for the 2 years we've been doing this. And for us it worked out really well.
Okay. And you guys just said approved each time, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Is Vienna going to go way over budget like Copenhagen did?
Well, I don't expect that, to be honest. And if you look at Copenhagen, the Song Contest itself did not go over budget. What went over budget was the expenses that the city made. And what the city did is they bid to host Eurovision along with a couple of other cities, and they had a very ambitious plan to put the Song Contest in this shipyard, which is obviously not a ready-made facility for a TV show. So what happened is that they heavily underestimated what it took to turn that empty shell into the TV studio for the biggest entertainment event of the year in Europe, and that eventually drove up the budget heavily. But the Song Contest as such, from the broadcaster point of view, was spot on in terms of budget. Okay.
And I'm assuming the answer to this is yes, because they're not building a new venue, but will Vienna be ready in time?
Well, the answer obviously is yes. They will be ready in time. But of course, like every year, the Song Contest comes with its challenges. First of all, because the venue is in the middle of a residential area, which means you have very little space around the venue, which we usually need for, power supply and TV trucks, all sorts of facilities. So it needs a bit of breathing space around the venue, and that we don't have. So that's challenging. And then at the same time, there are numerous other big events in Vienna at the same time. So the weekend before Eurovision Song Contest, there's the live ball, which have you ever heard about it?
No.
The live ball is an event which I think people like George Michael and Elton John, they're heavily backing it, and it's an annual festival to raise money and awareness for HIV and AIDS.
Oh, okay.
And they have a huge red carpet, lots of famous people a great show, and obviously a fundraising dinner at the end. That's huge. Then at the same time, there's the annual Liver Doctors Association having their annual conference there with, I think, 30,000 doctors.
Yeah, and who knew there were even 30,000 liver doctors?
Yeah. So we can have a good drink, and if something goes wrong, we'll be in good hands.
Right.
but this is surely interesting, but logistically it's all been worked out, and now we hope we'll just have a good time.
Okay, yeah, good point. Are you predicting that we're going to see as much questionable voting around this year, or do you think last year a lot of them learned their lessons that with the jury votes made public, questionable stuff suddenly becomes real obvious?
Well, I think you can always question the results, question why people voted in a certain way. If you have between 35 and 40 different countries voting, you're going to see countries swapping points. But what I think was really interesting after Copenhagen was that because everything was so much on display, it really led to people from the Sen community, journalists, to really look into these results and ask critical questions to us, but also to the broadcasters and to the individual jury members. And I think, and we actually hope what we're going to see in the years to come is that the more public these numbers are going to be and the more interest is going to be in these numbers, the more the judges will be aware of the fact that this is on display and that their integrity is really on the line, and that they have to vote with a clear consciousness and put professional effort into it. And I think that's a matter of time to make sure that when we get to a moment where you look at the voting and say, "Oh, this looks perfect. There's nothing to question." I think that's sort of a utopian scenario, but every step is a step in the right direction.
Yeah. And even when you get there, I'm pretty sure you'll have cases like Moldova and Romania somehow will just randomly be voting the other to the top.
Well, if you look at that's interesting, because if you look at the psychology of voting, it's very for a jury, music industry professionals who are used to listening to music and to make up their mind and really evaluate all the different aspects of a song. In that case, it may be possible to take 17 or 18 or even 25 or 26 songs and evaluate them and rank them. Mm-hmm. But for the average TV viewer, you sit there and you get this avalanche of music, songs that you have probably never heard before.
Right.
And then you have to decide. So you're going to need some links, some anchors to refer to. And what are you going to think about when the lines open and you get the possibility to vote? You're going to think, what do I remember? And what you're going to remember is obviously the things you paid more attention to. And people tend to pay more attention to whatever comes from neighboring countries, from people with the same cultural background and so on. And you know all these things as well. But the average viewer doesn't realize that. So when they see, with Romania, and there they go again with their 12 points in Moldova, or it's the Swedes voting for the Norwegians and Danes, that's perfectly natural. What we just find important is that we don't end up with the same scoreboard every year.
Right.
So that there is a sense of excitement in the result. I think having the juries definitely made a good contribution to that. And now it's just a matter of everyone saying their best songs and standing out because of that. And if you look at the results from the past years, we've had different winners from all different areas of Europe.
Right.
So that the voting in the end is doing a good job. That we are confident about.
Okay. Last question for you. You've already talked, you can't say Australia to answer this one also. What's the most interesting change we're going to see this year?
The most interesting change.
What everyone jumps out at you as being different.
Is not. What I think will be very interesting is the set design. There are some pictures already out there. What you see when you look at the set is a lot of tubes and spherical elements, and I've seen some animations of what they can do with that, and that looks really unlike I've ever seen.
Okay.
So it will. To me, it looks almost sort of out of this world, as if you were looking at an event from a parallel universe. So I think, from a show point of view, it's going to be spectacular again, along with the Australian thing, and what the impression I get now from the songs that have been chosen so far is that a lot of broadcasts are putting a lot of effort into it. There are some great things chosen already. I know some of them are still reworking their songs to make them better. So what I hope for is that not only we'll have a great set and a lot of spectacle as usual, but that the public will also notice that, hey, this is actually quite good music as well. And for that we have been criticized over the past decades. It's something we've worked on intensely with all the participating broadcasters. We work with the music industry to encourage them to send their best artists. So, as such, I hope that people will see that this is just a very good package.
I think people realize it's really good music because you wouldn't have the viewing audience you had if they didn't. It's just they like to. It's this very strange thing. I ran into some people from Norway here once. I mentioned I was going, and they just trashed Eurovision. Talked about, it's horrible, it's awful. And I mentioned to them that it had been held in Norway that year, and they said, "Oh yeah, we had tickets, we went."
Exactly. So it's also kind of a cultural thing to mock it. To make fun about it. It's always with soap operas. People always make fun of it. It's like the thing with, I think it was in Norway actually, they did a survey on how many people read gossip magazines. And I think the outcome was sort of in the range of 8% of the people that admitted they were reading gossip magazines. And then you look at the print runs of these magazines, and based on the print run alone, they had to conclude that at least 60% of the Norwegian population was at least once a week holding a gossip magazine in their hands. So there's a huge difference between what people like to say about themselves and how they actually behave. And I think the Eurovision Song Contest is one of these guilty pleasures that no matter what you think about it, you still want to see it. You want to be part of the talk on Monday morning at the coffee machine at work. You want to have something to say about it on Twitter. And that's, for us, also really interesting to see how the Song Contest is becoming much more of a media event rather than just a TV event.
Yeah.
If you look at what happens online, next month we will have our 1 billionth YouTube video view, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. We're coming out with a new app in early April. So there's a lot of good stuff going on outside of the TV screen, which makes the Song Contest really an interesting experience. Okay. All right, well, I've taken up a lot more of your time than I planned on taking up, so I just want to say... Oh, that's no problem. Okay, well, thank you very, very much.